Billionaires keep us distracted by racism and sexism so we don't realize they're playing in our faces, and that's why I think they stole the election. Let me go into this a little deeper. So I touched on this in my video, my most recent video, but there was a lot of conversation. I got some DMs, and I wanted to go in deeper with this theory that I have. My qualifications: I was an Africana Studies minor in college, and I've been a successful Black woman in predominantly white spaces all my life. So before you want to come into my comments as a straight man who voted for VP Harris, and you try to tell me what the world is like for successful Black women, and how white people aren't necessarily ready for that, please do not pretend like you know anything about it. Please do not pretend that you know more than I do from my own lived experiences. That is part of the problem. But let me go back to my original thesis statement. I can't remember if it was Audre Lorde or Bell Hooks, but there was, I graduated college in 2001, so it's been a minute. But I remembered first hearing the theory that racism is a construct that was created to distract people from making as much money as the wealthiest in the world. So what they do is they stoke fires of discontentment, and they keep us so distracted that when election results come up or when policies are made, we're not digging in deep enough. So many of us are so distracted by racism and sexism, which are very real things. Remember, I am a Black woman. So don't come for me with any notion that I fully don't understand that and that's not my lived experience. I know they exist, but more than one thing can be true at once. So, yes, it can be true that a ton of people did not come out and vote. Absolutely. It can also be true that there are a lot of Latino voters that voted for Trump. It can also be true that a ton of white women voted for Trump. And we already know a ton of white men voted for Trump. It can also be true that there were some Black men that voted for Trump. And the Asian community may have a lot of people that voted for Trump. But it can also be true that they purposely stoked fires so that we were too busy looking at each other and blaming each other so that we wouldn't ask the question, so we wouldn't challenge the numbers. You see, if you just stop at the beginning, then you're never going to actually take the time to say, wait a minute, let's look at these numbers. Like, how is it that there are certain Democratic governors that won their races and Democratic Senate members of Senate and Congress, but then Trump won the state? Or how is it that Trump won all of the swing states? How is it that Trump won enough to get the Senate and Congress? But there's just enough of like a divide in some of the races where we did have some historic wins. Like I believe there are going to be two black women serving in the Senate at the same time, and I think that's the first time in history. But remember, think about how magicians work, right? They keep us distracted so that we don't notice the sleight of hand. It's the oldest trick in the book, and they have kept us in this space for centuries, this space of only focusing on those two things, which again, I am not downplaying the seriousness of racism or sexism. In fact, the sexism from some of you liberal men who think you can teach me anything about what it is to be a Black woman in America, I don't care if you're in a relationship where your word is final. That's not me. So don't come into my comments thinking you're going to tell me anything. But if you are a Black woman, I'm absolutely happy to talk about it. Like I've had some dialogue with some Black women in my DMs because listen, we've been through a lot. I'm just offering this because it really gave me some peace when I really started thinking about things. Now, a lot of you that are saying that we should not even hope for a recount, a lot of you are not old enough to remember the hanging Chad debacle of the year 2000. Now, I am 45 years old. I graduated college in 2001, so my first presidential election that I voted in was in the year 2000. Actually, I wasn't even allowed to vote because back then they did not make it the information about how to do absentee ballots and how you have to vote like in your district was not out back then. It was not easy to come by. So I, living in Pennsylvania, thought that I could just vote at Pitt at my college because why wouldn't I be able to? Come to find out, they looked at my voter registration and they were like, oh, you have to go back and vote there. And I couldn't hop in a car. I don't think I even had a car at that point, and drive the 5 hours to go vote. So I missed out on that time. And I felt so guilty. And I vowed it would never happen again because that year was such a close race between former Vice President Al Gore and George W. Bush. And they had a recount in the state of Florida because they used to have like paper ballots. And there were these things called Chads, and they were inspecting the ballots because there were some Chads that there was the accusation that like some hanging Chads that were hanging off the ballot. Listen, look up hanging Chads. I I have so many things going through my mind because as it's been a week. But all of that to say, they had a recount in Florida because it was important. So when I'm hearing tons of people saying, hey, my vote wasn't counted, and when I'm looking at the numbers and saying, this doesn't make any sense, like How is it that we had a record number of new people registering to vote, but then the number of total votes doesn't match that data? Like, it just doesn't make sense. So, another way that they play in our faces is by planting the seed that, like, oh, you don't want to be a sore loser. You don't want to be a sore loser like the Republicans, right? So that you won't ask these questions. And that's how they keep us at the place we are. They don't want us to climb the ladders of success, right? Also, let's remember VP Harris is Big Sister General. Like, she is very, very smart. And I know that her people were looking at the numbers in confusion and suspicion as well. But did y'all look at her concession speech? Her concession speech, there was not a tear in her eye. And I was looking because I'm an actress and that's what I do. But I was like, oh gosh, she's putting on a brave front, right? But then when she walked away, that little bounce in her step, that little I was like, wait a minute. I think Big Sister General is telling us to, hey, kiddos, hey, youngins, it's not over. It's not over. So that's what I want us to just think about over the coming weeks. Because if it turns around the way I think it's going to turn around, I'm going to post a voice note that I sent to a few dear friends of mine. And the other thing I want to say is that the boundaries that we are putting in place as Black women, no matter what happens over the next couple of weeks, we have to hold those boundaries. Because the thing is, this is how it's such evil genius. Like, they know, they know that the seeds they've planted with racism and sexism are just sprouting rapidly. So hold the line, keep pouring into yourself. And the thing about me is I'm a verbal processor. So these videos aren't to educate anybody. They're actually helping me make sense of the world. This is actually quite a selfish video series because I need to make sense of this. Asking for a recount is not an unrealistic thing to ask for. We never have to just accept it and move on. You can choose to accept it, but that doesn't mean the rest of us have to. And if you are a Black woman, do whatever you want to do, believe whatever you want to believe. This is no judgment because y'all, this is a lot. It's a lot. She has a team of lawyers. She knows she was running against a convicted criminal. We have to trust that the universe is going to reveal what it needs to reveal. And also, I want to just point out that there are a remnant of us that are sounding the alarm saying something isn't right. And I do believe that all of us may not be the same spirituality, not the same type of spirituality, but I have seen people with spiritual insights that may call themselves witchy or whatever, or led by the Holy Spirit. People from all different religions, spiritual practices have been saying the same thing, that something isn't right. And it's okay that you don't believe me yet. It's okay that some of you don't believe me. It's fine. But I'm planting the seed because I think we as a people, we as a nation, if we keep letting these billionaires run things, if we keep living life trusting that the government has our best interests at heart, if we keep living life thinking that we just have to accept what we're given, then we're not going to get anywhere. And that's not how I live my life. That is not how I live my life. I'm the daughter of Scythian, Barty, and Young, okay? My people fought too hard for me to live the life I live. And yes, I wore the shirt on purpose. Let's keep being uppity. Let's keep getting what we deserve. Let's keep checking our work and challenging the power structures. Let's not keep falling for the okey doke. And again, leave Black women alone. I have no problem blocking people, but most of you on my Instagram, I actually know in real life. So this is your warning. I've already lost two friends, two straight men that tried to tell me what my experience should be in America, coming in thinking they were going to teach me something. And I was like, you know what? I'm good on this. I'm protecting my peace. So those are my thoughts for today. I'm going to go outside and spend some time with some friends. I suggest you do something good for yourself, Black women. Do something good for yourself this weekend. It's a holiday weekend. So I hope you find the time to be in whatever stages of grief that you need to be in. What is it? Acceptance, anger, acceptance, denial. I clearly don't know the order because I don't follow rules anymore. And to quote the great Reverend Jesse Jackson, keep hope alive. I don't think it's over, y'all. You don't have to believe me. You don't even have to agree with me, but keep this video in mind over the next couple weeks. I don't think it's over.